Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I had a whole spiel to welcome new people. I don't see anyone I don't know, though. So I can skip that. You all know the prayer room's open 24/7. All right, so before we begin, let's take a moment to set our compassionate intention, remembering that all beings have at one time or another been our kind mothers, and wishing they all be happy and free of suffering. We are studying the Dharma so that we may benefit them and bring that wish to fruition. So this class is part of a monthly series in which we discuss how to apply fundamental Buddhist principles to our daily lives. And today we're going to talk about the practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and how to strengthen our connection to those three jewels through daily mindfulness practices. And at the end, we'll do a short meditation. So taking refuge is the gateway to all of the Buddhist teachings. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche said, just as you have to step through the door to enter a house, every practice in the Sutrayana, the Mantrayana, and the ultimate vehicle of the Great Perfection has refuge as its threshold. So if refuge is the threshold to our spiritual house, then the four thoughts that turn the mind is the foundation of that house. So before we start talking about refuge, I'd like to just briefly touch on the four thoughts that turn the mind. The four thoughts that turn the mind are, I prostrate to the glorious Samantabhadra. This precious human birth is extremely difficult to obtain. All things born are impermanent and must die. If one perseveres in virtuous Dharma, this is the cause for becoming Buddha. Whatever negativity is produced will cause one to wander in the six realms. Hungry spirits suffer from hunger and thirst, animals from stupidity, hell beings from heat and cold, humans from birth, old age, sickness, and death, jealous gods from warfare, and even gods have their own particular suffering. So contemplation of these four thoughts upholds our practice, just like a foundation upholds a building. If we build a shoddy, shaky foundation, then that house is eventually going to come crashing down. But if we build a firm, stable foundation, carefully built, our home will stay up for a very long time. Similarly, if we study and practice the teachings of the Buddha in a superficial way, then we may discover after 10 or 15 years that there's not really been any change in our minds. We're still suffering from the same hatred, greed, ignorance, pride, and jealousy. These poisons limit our capacity to benefit ourselves and others. And so if we're still full of these poisons after 10 or 15 years, you might think that none of this works. That this worked for the Buddha, but it just won't work for you. There's something wrong with the methods. But they work just fine. It's the practitioner who isn't working, who isn't making the necessary effort to change. So we have to strive from the bottom of our hearts to make a firm foundation for our practice, so that our whole spiritual house can stay up and stay steady for a long time. Otherwise, we'll become easily discouraged, and if we become discouraged, we may blame the teachings for our own failings. And then we'll fabricate all kinds of excuses to avoid practicing. All sorts of outer and inner circumstances will seem to stand in our way. You have a headache, you're tired, it's a weekday, it's a weekend, it's morning, it's night. Like there's always a reason why you shouldn't practice, right? So I think it's like the Goldilocks syndrome. My cushion's too soft. No, my cushion's too hard. And it's like, if we truly understood the four thoughts that turn the mind, though, we would practice whether or not we had a headache, whether or not it was a weekday or a weekend, or whether a cushion is comfortable or not. It wouldn't matter. We would practice regardless of the circumstances. So one of the obstacles to our path is the fact that we are dominated by our attachments. We have many needs and desires that we feel that we absolutely must fulfill, and usually right now. Contemplating the first two thoughts helps us with this problem. So the first thought is the preciousness of this human rebirth. This precious human birth is extremely difficult to obtain. So statistically speaking, we are far more likely to have been born as an ant or a spider or some other being than in this human form that's capable of prayer and meditation. On top of that, we are fortunate to have been born in a place where the Dharma is being taught. We have access to the Dharma, and we have the faculties to understand the Dharma. This is unfathomably rare and precious. The second thought to contemplate is impermanence. All things born are impermanent and must die. Absolutely nothing in our experience is permanent. No thought, no feeling, no object. None of our enemies, our friends, or family, none of them are permanent. Not even the sun or sky is permanent. So even though some of these may bring happiness temporarily, nothing in our experience has the capability to bring us ultimate happiness. By meditating on these two thoughts, the precious opportunity of our human birth and the impermanent nature of all that is, we come to realize that our precious human birth is as rare as our time is short. And these two contemplations help to reduce our mind's poisons and steer our minds towards the path of liberation. When we carry these thoughts throughout our daily lives, we develop more equanimity. It reorders our priorities. So instead of trying to satisfy our endless worldly desires, we come to understand that enough is enough and develop contentment. Still, we may find ourselves up to our old tricks, seeking only relative temporary happiness and too short-sighted to seek liberation and ultimate happiness. So the Buddha had two more thoughts up his sleeve, or robe. The third thought is the law of cause and effect, or karma. Essentially, positive actions produce positive results, and negative actions produce negative results. It's like planting a tree. If you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. And no matter what you do, no matter what kind of crazy miracle grow product you use, you are never going to get an orange tree out of the apple seed. So if you wish to be happy, you have to plant the seeds of positive actions and avoid sowing the seeds of negative actions. Like produces like, and so we want to sow whatever it is that we want to reap. If one perseveres in virtuous Dharma, this is the cause for becoming Buddha. Whatever negativity is produced will cause one to wander in the six realms. So that brings us to the fourth thought on the all-pervasive suffering of cyclic existence. Hungry spirits suffer from hunger and thirst, animals from stupidity, hell beings from heat and cold, humans from birth, old age, sickness, and death. Jealous gods from warfare, and even gods have their own particular suffering. But basically, there is no happiness to be had in all of cyclic existence, in all of samsara. Everything is tainted in samsara. So even if something seems to bring you happiness, it eventually will not, because everything is impermanent. Gyatrul Rinpoche said, "Cyclic existence is a place of natural suffering. You should fear it as you might fear the nest of a poisonous snake." The all sentient beings, who are of the same nature as you and I, are trapped in this snake nest of cyclic existence due to ignorance. We don't know how to avoid sowing the seeds of suffering, and we don't know what seeds to plant for true happiness. And so we just stay stuck in this snake nest, going around and around, stuck in our suffering. Through the contemplation of karma and contemplating the faults of samsara, we reduce our attachment to conventional happiness. And with less attachment to our worldly experience, we're able to free ourselves from that muck and turn our minds towards the path of enlightenment. So these four thoughts that turn the mind are the foundational truths that underline the entire spiritual path. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche said, "We know that our contemplation of the four thoughts has been effective if we begin to see through our samsaric experience. to understand that it lacks essence, that nothing within it is reliable or unchanging. What then can we count on? Where will we find true heart, true essence? Only in the sacred Dharma, the spiritual path, will we discover something of absolute value. So now that we've contemplated the four thoughts, and we are aware of how precious our human birth is, we start to realize that to waste this human life on worldly endeavors would be like traveling to a land of precious jewels and returning empty-handed. So we need some kind of guide to show us how to make use of this precious opportunity that we have. We don't want to waste any time. We want to use our time effectively, and so we need someone to show us how. In our ordinary daily lives, if we want to do something new, we hire a professional. We hire a professional consultant or a teacher of some kind. So if you want to pick up scuba diving, you're not just going to go buy a wetsuit and jump into the ocean, right? You're going to hire a scuba diving instructor, someone who's done this before and knows the ropes. And by relying on the advice and assistance of our guide, we have some hope of success in our endeavor. So here we are, this new endeavor. We want to be free of cyclic existence. And we see that the Buddha was once an ordinary person just like us, wandering in this very same cyclic existence. But then, as Khenpo Norgay says, he got smart, and he found a way out of all this suffering. So not only that, but he has shown us the path through which he attained realization so that we can follow him and also attain realization. So it sounds like we'd be pretty smart to hire the Buddha as our guide. He's got to figure it out. He's written the book. Sounds like a good hire. So we want to seek the Buddha's help so that we can become like him. We also need to take refuge in his path, which is the Dharma. Lastly, we need friends to walk with on this path so we don't get lonely and lose heart. We need the support of the spiritual community, which is the Sangha. Together, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are called the three jewels. And the three jewels are the only dependable source of refuge from our confusion, our ignorance, and our attachment. They're the only ones that have the power to give us a permanent refuge and protection from cyclic existence. Your parents can't protect you, nor can any powerful, wealthy being. Donald Trump is not going to save us from samsara. Bill Gates is not going to save us from samsara. There's no worldly being that is able to save us, no matter how rich or powerful they may be. Similarly, no gods or spirits or demons or any other powerful metaphysical kind of being is able to protect us from this. So why not? No matter their power or wealth, why is no being in cyclic existence able to help us out of cyclic existence? Why are the three jewels our only source of refuge? Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche says, if you were in jail and wanted to be released, you would have to seek help from someone who had the power to free you, not from another prisoner. To be able to free us from the whirlpool of samsara, the basis of the refuge we seek must be something itself already totally free. There is only one source of refuge, free from all the limitations of samsara, complete with all the qualities of ultimate realization, and possessing the limitless compassion that can respond universally to the needs of sentient beings and lead them all the way to enlightenment, the three jewels. Okay, so our human birth is precious and short. We know that. And we know we need a guide to show us how to make good use of this time. The Buddha is the best guide, the Dharma is the best trail map, and the Sangha is the best group of hiking buddies we could hope for. So what does it mean to take refuge in them? Taking refuge is a personal commitment. Suppose we wanted to reach a mountaintop, and there were a bunch of different ways that we could get to the top. If we take a few steps up one path and then say, actually, maybe I'll take this path over here. And we take a few steps up that path, and then we say, actually, I think that one looks faster. And then we take a few steps up that path, and we keep going like this indefinitely. we will never get to the top of the mountain. You have to pick a path to get to the top of the mountain. When we take refuge, that's what we're doing. We're making a personal decision about what path is right for us. And we make a commitment to follow that path. Once you make the decision that this is the right path for you, you can formally take refuge in a refuge ceremony, committing to follow this path not only until the end of your life, but until you and all sentient beings have attained liberation. But the refuge vow is not something that you take only once in a ceremony. It's a vow that you have to take every single day. You don't have to wait for a formal ceremony to begin taking refuge in the 3 jewels. You can start any time, and the refuge prayer is very simple. And I think you all know it. I take refuge in the Lama, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Taking refuge requires that we have an appreciation for the qualities of the 3 jewels, beginning with those of the Buddha. There have been many great saints and teachers around the world that have founded spiritual paths, but the Buddha's qualities are unique. The Buddha eliminated all obscurations. This means that he completely purified all of his afflictive emotions, his past karma, his habits, and intellectual obscurations. Having done that, he exhibited the 112 marks of enlightened body. For instance, he had a radiant appearance that was apparent to anyone who saw him, and his feet didn't touch the ground. Anyone who came in contact with the Buddha was awestruck by his presence, and they knew he was an extraordinary being. He didn't have to advertise himself. People knew, just seeing him, that something is special here. This is an extraordinary being. He also exhibited the 60 qualities of enlightened speech. So this doesn't mean that he had a nice singing voice. This means that his speech was the perfect vehicle for communication. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche said that all of those who listened to a single teaching by the Buddha, no matter how vast the audience, heard perfectly, without amplification, a wealth of wisdom in their own language, as well as answers to their own particular questions. And there's a particular sutra that says even the Buddha gave a teaching and he was silent. He didn't even open his mouth to speak, and everyone still heard the teachings in their particular languages. And so if you speak Italian, he can speak Italian. He doesn't need Google Translate. The Buddha also possessed 2 omniscient qualities of enlightened mind: an omniscient, detailed, and discriminating awareness of phenomena on a conventional or relative level, and a profound awareness of the true nature of reality. So this means that in an instant, the Buddha is able to know everything. He's able to have a clear understanding of the nature of all things, knowing everything in one moment. That is his wisdom quality. Then there's the quality of his compassion, which is unconditional. We have compassion for our friends and families and maybe cute dogs, but maybe not spiders or some other thing we don't like. We're very limited and conditional in our compassion. But the Buddha's compassion is unconditional and unlimited. And we should understand the limitless qualities of the Buddha. Khenpo Norgay says, Buddhas are not confined to time, location, culture, traditions, or education. They are not black, not white, not brown, not bald-headed, not white-headed, or whatever. Their description is beyond all of these conceptual thoughts. Likewise, the compassion of the Buddhas is free of all of these conceptual barriers and is completely unconditional. The activity of the Buddhas is effortless and spontaneous. That's the quality of the activity of the Buddha. The Buddha emanates in many ways: male, female, peaceful, wrathful. And the Buddhas manifest in countless forms. All of these Buddhas around us. We have Chenrezig and Zambala and Tara. All of these Buddhas appear in order to benefit beings, and they appear in whatever form is needed. Sometimes they appear as a spiritual teacher, or an ordinary human being, or sometimes even an animal, or a tree, or a bridge. There's no kind of limitation as to how or into what a Buddha can manifest. So these are just a few of the Buddha's qualities. And it's important to contemplate these. Khenpo Norgay says it's kind of like a commercial on TV. You see a commercial for something on TV and it makes you like it and you want to learn more about it. And maybe you want to go check it out at the store. And so then this is what studying the Buddha's qualities is like for us. It's a little commercial so that we want to know more. We want to invest in that. We want to buy that. And so it's always good to just learn more and more about the qualities of the Buddha. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche said, "In taking refuge, we rely on the Buddha's example because, having accomplished the path, he has shown us the way. If we had to traverse a swampy marshland fraught with danger, someone who had already made the journey, who knew exactly what to avoid, who was sure of every step that must be taken, and who could lead us through flawlessly, would be a supremely valuable guide. The Buddha is such a guide. He has shown us what to abandon and what to embrace, pointing out the direction to take and demonstrating every step on the path to enlightenment." So once we have taken refuge in the Buddha, there are a few rules that we should follow. Once we have committed to following the Buddha, we're not going to follow any other worldly gods or powerful people of the world and seek refuge from them. We're going to seek refuge only from the Buddha. We should respect any representation of the Buddha, including paintings or statues. Even if they're in disrepair, we should still respect them. And we should always keep them in elevated places, a clean, high place. We must also respect any pure spiritual teacher from any religious tradition. You don't need to take refuge in or follow non-Buddhist teachers, but you should respect them and respect their teachings for what they are. And you also must respect their followers and not criticize them. Second, we take refuge in the sacred Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the methods he used to achieve enlightenment. According to His Holiness Penor Rinpoche, the sole purpose of the Dharma is to purify the karmic obscurations of beings and lead them to liberation. So everything we need to do has been clearly spelled out by the Buddha. The foundation, the path, the result, how to begin, how to overcome difficulties, how to enhance the positive qualities that we begin to develop. By relying on this path, we know that we can become just like Buddha. So having taken refuge in this path, in the Dharma, we should always have an attitude of loving kindness towards all sentient beings. Khenpo Palden Sherab says, "The essence of the Dharma is peace, nonviolence, and truth. To hold these values as our own is known as honoring the Dharma." This means you should not harm other living creatures, particularly not intentionally, with a mind of anger, desire, jealousy, attachment, or pride. You should give up all forms of violence, whether in thought, word, or deed. And Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche explains why we do this. In essence, the vow of refuge involves making a commitment to go the way of harmlessness. It's not that once we take refuge, the Buddha or some other enlightened being waves a magic wand and suddenly we're beyond pain or dissatisfaction. Rather, we ensure our own protection by addressing the root of suffering, which lies in our own harmful thoughts and actions. If we reduce these through the disciplined use of body, speech, and mind, we avert their negative karmic consequences and thereby eliminate the causes of suffering. This makes me think of that old joke where some guy goes to the doctor and he says, "Doc, every time I drink my coffee, I get a stabbing pain in my right eye." And the doc says, "Take the spoon out of your cup." So in this case, the spoon is our own negative thoughts and actions. And it causes us suffering. And so the Buddha says, take the spoon out of your cup. Stop doing that. So having taken refuge in the Dharma, we should always have an attitude of loving kindness towards all sentient beings. We should also always have a respect and appreciation for the teachings. The Buddhist scriptures contain all of the teachings we need to realize enlightenment and work for the liberation of all sentient beings. They are incredibly precious. They are the doorway to wisdom and everything beautiful. So we should always appreciate the Dharma and approach it with respect. You should never place scriptures or practice books directly on the floor, but always keep them in a clean and elevated place. Don't step over them or place anything else on top of them. Don't lick your fingers to turn the page or dog-ear the books or treat them with any kind of disrespect. And if for some reason a text becomes unusable, we don't just throw it in the trash. It's more respectful to throw it in a fire, and we have special blessing and burning processes that we do to respectfully dispose of texts that we can no longer use. We don't treat it just like any other book or paper. In fact, we should respect even a single syllable of the Dharma, even a single letter. And it's said that because even just a few letters on a page can spell part of the Buddha's name. And so we should respect any syllable of Dharma. And even though we have taken refuge in the Dharma, we should not feel superior to others. Even if we're convinced that this path is the path for us, it doesn't mean that we should disrespect the paths of others. We shouldn't criticize other schools or religions or brag and boast about our own path. We should just devote ourselves to following this path, but stay humble and keep an open mind. And keeping an open mind doesn't mean that you have to mix up the teachings of other schools or traditions and make a little hodgepodge mess of a path. It means that you should keep an open mind, which Khenpo Palden Sherab describes as viewing the teachings of all other schools as well as the entire expanse of phenomena in the state of pure perception. So third, we take refuge in the Sangha, our spiritual community. To take refuge in the Sangha means to move along the spiritual path together with a singular intention. And taking refuge in the Sangha does not just mean the Sangha of this temple, or the Sangha that you like, or the Sangha that you know, or the Sangha of even this tradition, of the Payul tradition or the Nyingma tradition. It's broader than that. It means taking refuge in all of the practitioners who have practiced the Buddha's methods and maintained his legacy in two unbroken lineages: the historical record of the teachings, the historical record of the scriptures that enshrine the teachings, and the mind-to-mind lineage, which is described as the vibrant tradition of personal experience that reveals the truth of these teachings. Chagdud Tulku Rinpoche says, because every generation since the Buddha has produced some individuals devoted to realizing the teachings, the Dharma has not become dry and intellectual, but remains fresh and alive. The Sangha is like a living mala, or strand of prayer beads, a string of practitioners, threaded together by their practice through the centuries, exemplifying the teachings and maintaining a vital tradition that is accessible to us today and will continue to be for generations to come. I love that. A strand of prayer beads, a string of practitioners threaded together by their practice through the centuries. So having taken refuge in the Sangha, we should always have respect for those who are following the path of truth, loving kindness, harmlessness, and compassion. We should always see one another with pure perception and kindness. In the Vajrayana teaching, Sangha members are referred to as Vajra brothers and sisters. And Vajra means indestructible. So we are indestructible brothers and sisters. And we should relate to each other as brother and sister. If someone is older than us, we can see them as a kind parent or family elder. And if they're younger than us, we can see them as our own children. Having taken refuge in the Sangha, you should not willingly share the lifestyle of those who live in a totally wrong way, with views opposite to yours. These people can have the power to turn your mind away from the Dharma and lead you down a bad path. So you should remember the law of cause and effect and live in accordance with it. Just because something is popular and people are doing it doesn't mean that you should join in. You should always judge your actions through the lens of the law of cause and effect. Even if other Sangha members are doing something that is immoral or wrong, you don't join in with them just because the group is doing it. You should always remember the law of cause and effect and have discernment about how the actions that you're taking are aligning with these values. So the last jewel of refuge that we should talk about is the Lama. So there's the three jewels of refuge, which are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. But they are all embodied in the Lama. And so when we take refuge, we first take refuge in the Lama, and then the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Lama is the holder of the lineage and assures that we're practicing the teachings correctly. And some lamas can even be manifestations of the Buddhas, living masters who can show us the path and give us guidance. And this is the lama or guru. So Khenpo Norgay says, you can think in terms of the blessings of the Buddhas of the 3 times and the 10 directions being channeled through the lama so that we can receive those blessings. And it's said that the lama is kinder than any of the Buddhas, because it is the Lama that is here with us now, and is the Lama that is bringing these blessings to us. It is the Lama that is taking the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha and distilling them into what we need in this moment, specifically for us. And so the Lama is giving us the exact right medicine that we need. So once we've taken refuge in the Lama, we should always respect them and see everything they do as Dharma. We should never hurt them or offend them in any way. It said we should not even step on their shadow, but we should respect them with pure perception and devotion in all circumstances. To take refuge is to have complete confidence in the 3 jewels, regardless of life circumstances, good or bad. And it means to always honor every aspect of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. These 3 jewels will continue to guide, support, and teach us until we become fully enlightened. And so we should always remember them and feel their presence within us. So we should never forget our objects of refuge. Whether we're happy or sad, we should remember the 3 jewels throughout every activity, every day. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche says, if you see a beautiful landscape, flowers, or anything wonderful and inspiring, offer it mentally to the 3 jewels. When good circumstances or events arise, see them as the blessing and kindness of the 3 jewels. Regard all sicknesses and obstacles without complaint as blessings in disguise that will enable you to purify your past negative karma. When confronted with great danger or with terrifying situations, call upon the 3 jewels for assistance. At that very moment, the blessings of the 3 jewels will grant you protection. When you practice taking refuge in this manner, refuge will become an inherent part of your stream of consciousness. So His Holiness Penor Rinpoche recommends that whenever we encounter problems, we should just think, it's up to the 3 jewels. And he says if we can do that, then even if we have scary dreams, we will instantly remember the 3 jewels in our sleep, and they will come and console us. And if we can remember the 3 jewels in our sleep, then we have a good chance of remembering them after death, in the intermediate state. So whether you are sick or scared or suffering, you should always feel that you have no hope other than the 3 jewels. They are Obi-Wan Kenobi, our only hope. And they will always protect us no matter what happens. So if you're sick, you should think, even if I die from this illness, it's okay, because the 3 jewels of refuge will protect me. Because we're not just taking refuge in them for this life. We're not just taking refuge in them so we can say, please keep me comfortable for the next 50 years. It's not just for that. It's for the whole of our continuity of lives until we attain enlightenment. And so it's okay. Even if I die from this illness, the 3 jewels will protect me and guide me. So then you might think, well, what about the doctor? Am I not supposed to see a doctor? I'm just supposed to sit here thinking about the 3 jewels and not see a doctor? But that's not what this is saying. You should see a doctor and try to get better, but you should keep in mind that the doctor is only helping you temporarily by healing your body of the illness. But the 3 jewels are your only source of ultimate refuge. And in fact, the doctor, the medicine, and the curative power or the curative effect of that medicine are all the blessings of the 3 jewels. So you want to pray to the 3 jewels that you have a doctor, that you have medicine, and that it works. So when we encounter good things, we should remember the 3 jewels too. It's said that everything pleasant and good in this world, even the slightest breeze on a hot day, comes from the compassion and blessings of the Buddha. In the same way, the smallest positive thought arising in your mind is the blessing of the Buddha. In the Way of the Bodhisattva, Shanideva says, as when a flash of lightning rends the night, and in its glare shows all the dark black clouds had hid, likewise, rarely, through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts rise, brief and transient in the world. So you should recognize the Buddha's compassion in everything that helps you and makes you happy. If you have a kind thought, recognize that it is the Buddha's blessing that you have had that kind thought. Be grateful for any goodness that you experience, any joy that you experience. Be grateful for it and dedicate that happiness to all sentient beings, wishing that they too may have that joy. So there are some simple things that we can do throughout the day to help us remember the 3 jewels and deepen our connection to them. In the morning when you wake up, and also in the evening, you should take refuge 3 times. You can repeat, I take refuge in the Lama, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And say that 3 times in the morning when you wake up and before you go to sleep. When you walk, you can think that the 3 jewels are above your right shoulder and that you are walking around them respectfully. And when you eat, you offer the first part of your food to the 3 jewels and then eat the rest as if it had been given back as a blessed substance. When you have new clothes to wear or any new things, you buy some new iPod or gadget, you can lift it up and offer it mentally to the 3 jewels before wearing it or using it. And you offer it up and then use them thinking that the 3 jewels have given them to you. And use them for the benefit of all beings. You can make the wish that, I offer these clothes to the Buddhas, and then as I wear them, may any being who sees these clothes have a connection to the Dharma. You can associate wishing prayers with everything that you use. Whenever you see anything that gives you joy or that you find desirable, you can offer it mentally to the 3 jewels. You don't have to own it. You can just be going for a walk and see someone's beautiful garden and offer it to the 3 jewels. or the flowers, streams, forests, beautiful houses, jewelry, anything clean, pure, and desirable you can offer to them. When you go to get a glass of water, when you're filling a container with water, you can first throw a few drops in the air and say, I offer this water to the 3 jewels, and then fill your glass. When you go to sleep, you can visualize the 3 jewels in your heart and fall asleep with your mind concentrated on them. And if you can't do that, you might think of your teacher and the 3 jewels being present on your pillow right next to you, full of love and compassion for you, and then fall asleep with your mind filled with devotion. So by practicing in this way, never parting company from the thought of the 3 jewels, we will remember them always, in this life and in all of our lifetimes to come. They will always be there when we need them, because we will remember to call on them. As Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche said, Buddhas are as ever-present as the sky. So they are always here. They are always available to help us. We just have to remember them and ask for their help. His Holiness Penor Rinpoche said, in this world, there is nothing more precious and essential than the 3 jewels. And by depending on them, we can part from the sufferings of samsara. Remind yourself of that again and again, and never forget it. We cannot immediately see the power of the 3 jewels, but by relying on them, we can gradually get rid of our disturbing emotions and ego clinging. Having planted the seed through their blessings, we can attain the state of liberation and omniscience, which is ultimate peace, bliss, and happiness. So that is refuge. And that's the way that we can connect with our refuge practice throughout our days. So now we're going to try a technique to stabilize our minds called shamatha meditation. And this is from Jetsuma's book, Stabilizing the Mind. So this meditation helps to calm our reactivity to thoughts, emotions, and events, thereby creating the space for us to awaken to wisdom. So we'll sit comfortably, back straight, and place your hands in your lap, gently relaxed. And keep your eyes slightly open, just pointed down slightly. I have a little friend mosquito over here, okay? Mosquito's gonna meditate with me. So we can just keep our eyes slightly open, pointed downwards, and you can place the tip of your tongue just right behind your front teeth. So your jaw is relaxed. So in watching the breath creates mental stability, but it's very relaxing. So try not to fall asleep. It's going to be very short, only 5 minutes. But if you find yourself getting sleepy, reconnect with your compassion. When we're fixated on ourselves, we tend to just think that now is a good time for a nap. But if we're mindful of our purpose, then we'll remember that we're here meditating for the benefit of all beings. And that will help to keep us awake. So allow that compassion to keep you awake and be a fire in your heart. And if you're really sleepy, it helps to raise your gaze a little bit. And if your mind's really wound up, it helps to lower your gaze a little bit. So allow yourself to relax completely and breathe normally. Put a very light attention on your breathing. Don't try to control it at all. Just breathe naturally. And put the most gossamer thin attention on your breath. It's like taking your pulse. You don't put any pressure on it. Just observe it. Your attention is like a feather, gently riding on the surface of your breath. I'm going to set a timer for us. So, and if you become distracted, just disengage from those thoughts. Don't try to suppress the thoughts, just let them be. Jetsama says our meditation is not lost by hearing our thoughts, but by following them. So when you find yourself following a thought, just drop it. Don't look at it first and see if it's a good thought or a bad thought. Doesn't matter. Just drop the thought and return to your breath. That gossamer thin feather. So we'll meditate for 5 minutes and then we'll say a short dedication. the dedication in this Khenpo.
Okay. By this effort,
May all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms. Thank you for coming, everyone.